Yeah. It's not unexpected. So the odds of the UK agreeing to this. So just to be clear, there's 17 countries in the Eurozone. There's 27 countries in the EU. And the EU Council is the council of the heads of states of the 27, plus a few other people, like the EU President and the European Council and European Commission presidents. So the crisis has really been within the Eurozone. So to drag all the 27 countries into this is not obvious that it's even necessary. But the problem, and this is really important, the mechanism to enforce the 60% debt and the 3% deficit, and it's actually, the words are 0.5% structural deficit. So you can have a cyclical deficit up to 3%, but the structural can't be more than 0.5%. So that is going to reside within the European Commission, which is kind of the executive of the EU. So the laws that pass the EU have to come through the Commission. The Council is just the council of the heads of state, and they would make changes in the overall treaty and then go back to their countries and get approval or ratification of that. So the Council was meeting. So the sort of things that the UK was worried about are well documented in the press. They just could not stomach the idea of financial regulation for the city, which is the world's financial center, being determined in Brussels. Things like a Tobin tax, which they're very much against, a transactions tax, could be just approved in Brussels and could be devastating to London. If London imposes a tax like that, it's pretty simple what's going to happen. Trading is just going to move to a different location. Okay, and other countries don't really care because the trading doesn't occur in those countries. So things like that where, given the financial services industry is so important to the UK, to put it at risk just doesn't make any sense. And anyways, the whole motivation for this is the problems within the Eurozone. They're fine with having, they always just wanted a free trade zone and some reasonable regulations that governing trade and things like that that are uniform amongst countries. So you don't want huge subsidization of one particular industry in a particular country. That's just not fair. So that's the sort of thing that the EU was designed to do. So the UK always just wanted a free trade zone, and it didn't make any sense for them to go into the Eurozone. And given the Eurozone is in distress, and they had to do radical thing like give up fiscal sovereignty, UK just not interested. And it's really interesting because you look at the press reports, the UK isolated, you know, everybody's mad at David Cameron. The best line I saw today, it was a great line. Somebody said that, you know, what kind of a disaster this was for the UK. And the retort was, well, it's kind of like, you know, remaining on the dock in Southampton, April 12th, 1912, the day the Titanic set sail. So yeah, he stayed on the dock. Actually, when something goes on the internet like this, very interesting. J.P. Morgan stayed on the dock. He was booked on that voyage, and he wasn't feeling well that day, so he decided not to take it, though he did own White Star. But that's an aside. I don't think it's a big deal. The UK is a large economy, but it's not as large as Germany, not as large as France, actually. It's close. But given it is the financial center, it's just too much at risk, and they'll do just fine. And I think that there will be some talk about exiting the EU, but again, the problem is the following: that the enforcement of this fiscal compact is through the EU, but not all the EU are involved in the fiscal compact. It makes it a nightmare. Okay, so it's not the Eurozone 17 sitting around deciding whether Greece's budget is what it should be. It's the EU, it's the European Commission, the executive, taking a look at it and approving the plans for debt well in advance of the offerings. So everything, the mechanisms are EU. So if a country violates, what happens? Well, it doesn't go to a group of the 17 countries in the Eurozone. It goes to the European Court of Justice, which is an EU mechanism. So it is getting very complicated in that the EU is being used for things that apply to only a subset of the EU members.